On Saturday, December 6, 1941, the repair ship USS Vestal docked alongside the U.S. Arizona at Pearl Harbor, positioned port side to port side. The Arizona had recently returned from maneuvers and was scheduled for maintenance before moving into dry dock the following week. The Vestal was tasked with rewinding the armatures of the Arizona's large electric motors and performing other maintenance tasks to expedite her time in dry dock. The crews of both ships prepared for a relaxing weekend, with work on the Arizona set to begin on Monday. Seaman First Class Henry M. Lander, who had only been aboard the Vestal for a month and was still familiarizing himself with the ship, planned to sleep in on Sunday. He was assigned to the print shop and bunked in the compartment 3 decks down on the port side. However, the peaceful weekend plans were shattered early the next morning. M. Lander was jolted awake by a powerful explosion on the other side of the bulkhead. It was a bomb intended for the Arizona, marking the beginning of a harrowing 60 hours for the crew. The USS Vestal, already one of the oldest ships in the fleet by 1941, had originally been launched as a collier in 1909. Even then, she was becoming outdated as navies transitioned from coal-fed engines to fuel oil. In 1913, the Vestal was converted into a repair ship, though it continued using coal in its boilers until 1921. During the same period, other colliers were also repurposed. For instance, the U.S. Jupiter was converted into the Langley, the first American aircraft carrier. In 1927, the Vestal was assigned to the Pacific Fleet and made a leisurely journey through the Panama Canal to San Diego, where she served during the Great Depression. Financial constraints within the armed services meant that older ships like the Vestal remained in service longer than originally intended. In May 1940, the Pacific Fleet relocated its headquarters from San Diego to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, as a defensive measure to safeguard American interests in the Philippines and the Far East. However, the Japanese viewed this move, which placed the American fleet 3,000 miles closer to Japan, as an aggressive provocation. On the morning of December 7, 1941, the crew of the Vestal was expecting a typical day. The schedule included reveille at 6:30 a.m., breakfast at 7 o'clock, followed by muster at stations at 8 o'clock. The starboard watch was set to go on shore leave, with other activities like mail call, inspections, and an evening movie planned. However, the events of that Sunday would prove to be anything but routine. Seaman M. Lander was abruptly awakened by the force of an explosion on the starboard side of his print shop. Responding to the call to general quarters, he rushed to the deck. Once there, he was quickly sent below again to ensure no one remained in the blast area. Navigating through the damaged decks, he found them empty. However, when attempting to return topside, he encountered numerous sealed hatches. Finally locating an open hatch, he squeezed through and emerged on deck. M. Lander's action station was located in the aft magazine, at the far end of the ship. On his way there, he came across a wounded sailor. Wanting to provide some shelter, M. Lander pulled the man into a nearby officer's companionway. The injured sailor, aware of the unspoken rules about areas designated for officers, pleaded not to be left there, saying, "This is officers' territory." M. Lander reassured him to rest easy and continued toward his post. As he approached the aft magazine, M. Lander discovered it had been flooded to prevent an explosion following a second bomb strike. He turned back towards the forward part of the ship. Amidst the chaos, the order to abandon ship was suddenly given. Lacking swimming skills, M. Lander flagged down a passing launch and, along with some of his shipmates, managed to get aboard. Meanwhile, below decks, damage control teams were working desperately to stabilize the ship. They reinforced the bulkheads to withstand the influx of seawater through the bomb-damaged hull. The chief engineer, operating on instinct, fired up the boilers in an attempt to generate steam, despite numerous leaks and ruptured lines complicating their efforts. With communication with the bridge severed, a seaman was sent topside to receive further instructions. He returned with orders to abandon ship, prompting the crew in the boiler room to evacuate. Upon reaching the deck, enveloped in flames and smoke, they were met with a surprising announcement over the public address system, instructing all hands to return to their battle stations. The captain had decided to detach the Vestal from the Arizona, intending to maneuver the repair ship away from the burning battleship to save it from the impending disaster. Commander Cassin Young, the captain of the U.S. Vestal, had a particularly challenging morning on the day of the Pearl Harbor attack. A U.S. Naval Academy graduate and a former submariner, Commander Young embodied naval tradition. He bore a name steeped in naval history, being named after a War of 1812 hero. Coincidentally, a destroyer also named U.S. Young, honoring the same historical figure, was present in Pearl Harbor that day. On that fateful morning, for reasons not documented, Commander Young had left the bridge and was manning the ship's 3-inch anti-aircraft gun when the Arizona's forward magazine exploded. The tremendous blast shook the Vestal violently as it struck anew and hurled Commander Young and his crew members into the oil-covered water below. At that moment, the ship's executive officer, also named Young, issued the order to abandon ship, prompting crew members, including Henry M. Lander, to seek safety. Emerging from the water drenched and slick with oil, Commander Young vehemently opposed the abandonment of the ship. He shouted at the crew, who were trying to escape, to return and man their stations. Despite the perilous conditions, with the ship's interior filling with smoke and leaking from ruptured steam lines, the chief engineer and his team returned to the boiler room. They worked tirelessly to generate what little steam pressure they could muster, barely 50 pounds, far less than the usual 250 pounds required to get underway. Nevertheless, it was sufficient to start the Vestal's engines. As the situation worsened, with the Vestal taking on water from the aft bomb hit and beginning to list to starboard, Commander Young acted decisively. He ordered the crew to sever the mooring lines from the Arizona, which was burning uncontrollably and sinking into the harbor floor. A nearby tug was hailed to assist in maneuvering the Vestal, but as the damage reports became increasingly dire, it became clear that the ship was in danger of sinking. To prevent this, Captain Young made the critical decision to beach the Vestal, ensuring its survival. By the end of that harrowing day, the Vestal was aground but out of immediate danger. The ship did not escape unscathed, with 7 crew members officially reported dead and many others wounded. That evening, a detachment from the Vestal's welding shop was sent to the capsized U.S. Oklahoma in a desperate attempt to rescue trapped sailors. In the aftermath of the attack, the crew of the Vestal faced weeks of intense work. The ship required extensive repairs to her bomb-damaged hull and bulkheads. However, given the critical need for operational fighting ships, the Vestal's repair crew also assisted in the urgent repairs of other damaged vessels. The work was relentless but crucial. On April 18, 1942, Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of the Pacific Fleet, visited the still-damaged Vestal. He was there to present the newly promoted Captain Young with the Medal of Honor, recognizing his bravery and leadership. On December 7, the Vestal herself was awarded a Battle Star, an unusual honor for a non-combatant service ship, acknowledging her crew's courage under fire. After months of repairs, the Vestal was back in action by August 1942. She was dispatched to the South Pacific, where the Marines had just begun their offensive operations at a then little-known location, Guadalcanal. The ship continued to serve as a vital repair vessel, supporting the fleet in the critical early days of the Pacific Campaign. The naval battles supporting the landing on Guadalcanal, a remote island in the South Pacific, were among the most critical of World War II. Despite suffering a significant defeat at the Battle of Midway, the Japanese still possessed superior naval strength compared to the Americans. This was starkly demonstrated in the Battle of Savo Island on the night of August 9, where the Japanese forces, in a surprise night attack, sank 4 Allied cruisers without suffering any losses. The arrival of the U.S. Vestal at Guadalcanal on August 29 came at a critical time. Just 2 days after the Vestal's arrival, the U.S. Saratoga, an aircraft carrier, was patrolling the waters when it was struck by a torpedo from a Japanese submarine. Although the attack resulted in no fatalities, it caused significant damage to the Saratoga's electrical system, leaving the carrier incapacitated and adrift. The Saratoga had to be towed to the nearest repair base at Tongatabu, where the Vestal had just anchored. Divers discovered a massive 40-foot hole in the carrier's starboard hull, necessitating urgent repairs. The crew of the Vestal, alongside teams from other ships, worked tirelessly to stabilize the Saratoga. They trimmed and braced the damaged area, sealed and pumped out nearby flooded compartments, and made temporary repairs to ensure the carrier could safely make the journey back to Pearl Harbor for comprehensive repairs. During their time at Tongatabu, the Vestal's crew undertook a myriad of repair projects, large and small, across more than 50 ships, showcasing their versatility and crucial role in maintaining the fleet's operational readiness during this intense period of the war. In late October, the U.S. Vestal was relocated closer to the front lines at Nuea, the capital of New Caledonia, where significant strategic decisions were being made. Admiral William Bull Halsey, who had just arrived at Nuea, was taking a hands-on approach, determined to support the Marines with every available resource. His strategy involved keeping ships operational without sending them back to Pearl Harbor for repairs unless absolutely necessary. This decision was crucial as it allowed more warships to remain in the combat zone. Vestal reached Nuea on October 31 and immediately began undertaking essential repairs. Upon arriving in Nuea, Captain Cassin Young, who had distinguished himself during the Pearl Harbor attack, was promoted and given command of the cruiser USS San Francisco. This promotion came with little fanfare due to the urgency of the situation, as ships were returning from battles around Guadalcanal in dire need of repairs. One of the most critical repairs involved the aircraft carrier Enterprise, heavily damaged by 3 bombs during the Battle of the Eastern Solomons. Admiral Halsey's directive was clear. The Enterprise would not return to Pearl Harbor, but would instead be repaired on-site to swiftly return to action. Vestal's crew set to work on the Enterprise, which had significant damage. 2 aircraft elevators and a torpedo elevator were out of commission, crew quarters were damaged, and the arrestor cables used for landing aircraft were severed. The challenge was immense, but the urgency of the repairs underscored their importance. As the First Naval Battle of Guadalcanal unfolded on November 12, a Japanese fleet consisting of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers approached Henderson Field, intending to bombard it. In response, Admiral Halsey deployed all available surface units, including the cruiser squadron, led by Captain Young aboard the San Francisco. The ensuing night battle was chaotic and fierce. The Japanese battleship Hai was sunk, but the American fleet suffered heavily, with every ship engaged sustaining damage. Tragically, during the intense close-range firefight, much of the San Francisco's bridge was obliterated, and Captain Young, along with many of his officers, was killed. The news deeply saddened the Vestal's crew, who felt a profound sense of loss as they later worked to repair the San Francisco. Despite the grief, the war pressed on. New threats emerged as more Japanese ships were detected heading toward American positions on Guadalcanal. The situation was so critical that even the partially repaired Enterprise was ordered back into action. Remarkably, 40 officers and men from the Vestal remained aboard the Enterprise, continuing their repair work as the carrier sailed out to sea. The urgency of their mission meant they worked tirelessly up until the point when preparations were made to launch aircraft. The Enterprise, still functioning at reduced capacity, could only launch and recover planes at half her normal operational capacity. To maintain secrecy and avoid directing enemy attention, aircraft launched from the Enterprise would operate over Henderson Field and return there instead of directly returning to the carrier. The sequence of these events illustrates the desperate and determined efforts of the U.S. Navy to maintain their operational capabilities in the face of overwhelming odds during a pivotal moment in the Pacific theater. The rapid repairs and the bravery of those involved were crucial in sustaining the fight during a critical phase of World War II. The U.S. Enterprise played a pivotal role in securing victory at the Second Battle of Guadalcanal, earning a Presidential Unit Citation for her actions. The crew members of the U.S. Vestal who were aboard the Enterprise during this critical engagement shared in this prestigious honor, recognizing their essential contributions to the ship's operational readiness. During the brief 12 days the Vestal spent at Nuea, her crew undertook an impressive workload, repairing over 20 ships and completing approximately 158 job orders. Following their efforts in Nuea, the Vestal was ordered to move even closer to the front lines, heading to Espiritu Santo, about 500 miles nearer to the ongoing combat. For over a year, the Vestal remained stationed in the South Pacific, continuously performing vital repair work. Except for a brief 2-week period for an overhaul and barnacle scraping in Australia, the ship's crew faced a relentless stream of damaged vessels needing immediate attention. Despite the demanding nature of their work, There were lighter moments. The ship's softball team, known as the Vestal Virgins, dominated their competition, boasting a record of 24 wins and only one loss. They achieved the title of South Pacific Softball Champions of 1943, providing a welcome distraction and morale boost amidst the arduous repairs. Amidst the ceaseless flow of damaged ships, the cruiser Pensacola arrived at Espiritu Santo after suffering severe damage in the Battle of Tassafaronga. A torpedo had struck her stern, nearly severing it from the rest of the ship, leaving the entire weight of the stern precariously resting on a single propeller shaft. The Vestal's repair crew faced the daunting challenge of stabilizing the cruiser. They carefully sealed and pumped out the compromised compartments and reinforced the stern to ensure the Pensacola could endure the journey back to Pearl Harbor for more comprehensive repairs. This incident highlighted the Vestal crew's expertise and resourcefulness in handling unprecedented repair challenges under wartime conditions. The U.S. Minneapolis arrived at Espiritu Santo with significant damage from the Battle of Tassafaronga, where a torpedo had blown off 75 feet of her bow. Similarly, the U.S. New Orleans, another veteran of the same battle, managed to reach port despite losing her bow to a torpedo hit. These cruisers were among the 279 ships that sought repairs from the U.S. Vestal during her year-long deployment in the South Pacific. The Vestal's crew demonstrated remarkable versatility and skill, working on a wide array of vessels, including merchant ships, amphibious craft, service ships, tankers, and various fighting ships. As the war transitioned to the Central Pacific, so did the Vestal. From November 1943 to January 1944, she served in the Ellis Islands, where her crew worked on over 70 vessels that supported the intense landings at Macon and Tarawa. The end of January saw the Vestal ordered to Macon Island, newly captured by American forces, but before she could proceed, an unexpected incident required her services elsewhere. On the night of February 1, during fleet maneuvers, a significant collision occurred between two American battleships near Kwajalein Atoll. The U.S. Indiana was maneuvering to take a position at the front of her battle squadron and had abandoned her zigzag course. Meanwhile, the U.S. Washington, following her scheduled course, turned to port and collided with the Indiana amidships. The impact caused the Washington's bow to telescope backward, and as she disengaged, most of the damaged bow section fell into the sea. Concerned about potential submarine threats, the captains of both battleships navigated their heavily damaged vessels to the safety of Majuro Harbor at a slow pace of 4 knots, highlighting the constant dangers and complexities of naval operations during the war. Following the collision between the U.S. Washington and the U.S. Indiana, the U.S. Vestal was dispatched to Majuro Harbor to assist. The Vestal's experienced crew, accustomed to handling a wide range of repair tasks, including on destroyers, cruisers, and carriers, tackled the Washington's damage as just another, albeit larger, job. In a remarkable display of efficiency, they patched up the battleship sufficiently within 10 days to allow her to steam to Pearl Harbor and then on to Seattle, where a new bow was installed. The Washington was back in action within 3 months. After a grueling year and a half of continuous service, the Vestal herself required significant maintenance. She sailed to Mare Island Shipyard for a comprehensive overhaul, including replacing her evaporators and installing new equipment. This period also provided a much-needed respite for her war-weary crew. Refitted and refreshed, the venerable Vestal returned to duty by September 1944, just in time for the pivotal Battle of Leyte Gulf. The American fleet's forward base during this engagement was at the atoll of Ulithi, a large natural harbor capable of sheltering an entire fleet. At Ulithi, the Vestal worked on over 140 vessels, from small crafts to major warships. Her reputation as the Mighty V, or more humorously, the Mighty Lucky V, reflected her vital role and the good fortune of her survival amidst numerous dangers. In February 1945, the Vestal moved to the waters off Saipan, supporting naval operations for 2 months, primarily working on amphibious craft involved in the island's invasion. By April, she was repositioned to support the Okinawa landings. Despite being anchored in what was considered a jinx spot, where 3 previous occupants had been struck by kamikazes, the Vestal once again found herself under fire. During May alone, her crew was called to battle stations 50 times. The ship's 3-inch gun engaged incoming enemy aircraft, and her crew witnessed kamikaze planes crashing perilously close. Repair work had to be interspersed with these attacks, often focusing on patching up destroyers from the picket line, which suffered heavy losses from suicide attacks. For her courageous service under fire at Okinawa, the Vestal earned a second battle star. This recognition was part of her legacy as one of the few ships to serve through both world wars and as perhaps the most decorated service ship in the U.S. Navy. Even as World War II drew to a close, the Vestal remained active, assisting with repairs on vessels damaged by typhoons, narrowly avoiding such destruction herself. She continued to serve in Japanese and Chinese waters, supporting occupation efforts until finally returning home in April 1946. The grand old ship was then decommissioned and eventually broken up. The legacy of the Vestal and her crew lives on, with surviving members maintaining active reunions. They remember the long, arduous journey that began on a fateful Sunday morning at Pearl Harbor, marking the start of an epic World War II odyssey filled with danger, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to duty. The narrative begins with the Vestal's presence at Pearl Harbor on December 6, 1941, as it moored alongside the U.S. Arizona for routine maintenance. The following morning, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor thrust the Vestal into immediate action. Seaman First Class Henry M. Lander's harrowing experience during the attack is recounted, highlighting his efforts to save fellow sailors and his role in the ship's damage control. The Vestal, originally launched as a collier in 1909 and converted to a repair ship in 1913, was an aging vessel by 1941. Despite its age, the ship proved indispensable during the war. The script covers the Vestal's crucial contributions during the early stages of the war, including its operations in the South Pacific, where it provided vital repairs to numerous ships, including the heavily damaged U.S. Washington. As the war progressed, the Vestal moved to support key battles in the Central Pacific, including the landings at Macon and Tarawa. The ship's role in repairing the U.S. Enterprise, which was critical in the Second Battle of Guadalcanal, is particularly emphasized. The Vestal's efforts were vital in maintaining the operational readiness of the fleet amid relentless Japanese attacks. The script also covers the Vestal's time in Ulithi, where it worked on over 140 ships and earned nicknames like Mighty V and Mighty Lucky V. It then details the ship's role in supporting operations off Saipan and later at Okinawa, where it faced kamikaze attacks. The Vestal's successful repair of the damaged cruiser Pensacola and its resilience under fire earned it a second battle star. The narrative concludes with the Vestal's post-war service, repairing vessels damaged by typhoons and supporting the occupation of Japanese and Chinese waters. After returning to the U.S. in April 1946, the ship was decommissioned and scrapped. The legacy of the Vestal and its crew is remembered through reunions and the enduring impact of their bravery and service during World War II. The conclusion of the script reflects on the U.S. Vestal's enduring legacy and the profound impact of its service during World War II. After a remarkable journey through the war's major battles and operations, the Vestal's story highlights both the ship's and its crew's extraordinary resilience and dedication. As the war drew to a close, the Vestal continued to demonstrate its critical role in supporting the American fleet. Despite the end of active combat, the ship was engaged in vital repair work, dealing with vessels damaged by typhoons and other war-related challenges. This final phase of service underscores the ship's ongoing importance in maintaining naval operations even as the conflict wound down. In April 1946, the U.S. Vestal returned home after years of continuous sea duty. The ship was decommissioned and eventually broken up, marking the end of its storied career. Yet, the legacy of the Vestal lived on, not just in its battle honors and service records, but also in the memories of its crew. The surviving crew members of the Vestal, reflecting on their experiences through reunions and personal recollections, continue to honor their shared history. The ship's odyssey from the attack on Pearl Harbor to the battles of the South Pacific and beyond is a testament to the courage, endurance, and unwavering commitment of its crew. Their collective efforts not only contributed to American victories in World War II, but also established the Vestal as one of the most highly decorated service ships in naval history. Overall, the U.S. Vestal story is a powerful narrative of bravery and perseverance, illustrating how a repair ship, against all odds, became a symbol